Okay, everybody, thanks for joining. This is Governance Working Group call number 16. Today is Wednesday, June 10th. I will go ahead and share the link to the agenda here again, just in case anyone didn't already have it open. Hey, Philip, thanks for joining, everybody. I'm just going to kind of move down the agenda in order like we usually do here. Wow, it's been a while since I've done one of these. I'm feeling rusty. Okay, so we'll start with stand-up.
Good morning.
Good morning. Hey, Philip. Yeah, so we usually kick off our calls with stand-ups, and for anyone who wants to share, it would be helpful to hear what you've been working on. If there's anything anyone on the call can help with, or any blockers, and what you intend to be up to for the next week. So does anyone want to start with a stand-up?
I've been studying and reviewing all the resources that was well put with Jason, well organized. So I've been checking up, reading, and I was wondering if we could get some of the principles, also the behavior or how you say, the rules of behavior or conduct. I don't remember the name that was in English, but if we can get something that one of the take up or take what's the phrasal verb that has been used, take over, no, take up, something like that. It was that actually there's some principles that Blockstack has managed to create that the people want to maintain, and so that those are the things that and you can see the reaction of the people that have come into the community, that they see something that they see of value, and then they're happy, and then they say there's the only community that they have felt welcome, and they felt that that there's something that also the values that the people are happy, and that's something that we have to see how we capture that in a way that we don't lose that. And well, that's my reflection of what I have been reading. Of course, there's much more than that, but that's something very, very important. And also that Munib was trying to also to capture that and put it in that letter to the PVC employees, or I say the collaborators, and that we have to protect and be helping, whatever needs people have because of all this problems of racism and hatred.
Thank you, Philip. Very timely and important message. I appreciate that. Thanks for sharing some of what you've been reading. For anyone who joined the call late, we are just going around and doing stand-ups for anyone who wants to share what they've been working on or what they will be working on over the next few days. Does anyone else want to give a stand-up?
If I could find the right buttons. There we go. Okay, so yeah, I raised you to that link. So Philip, thank you for that. I shared the link to Munib's post from the forum. So that was on the recent injustices in the US. And I do agree. One thing I've seen as well in Discord is definitely anybody coming into the community really praises the community for how we support each other, how we work with each other. And I think the more we can keep up that energy, the better off we will all be. So definitely appreciate that. And from my side, I've finally been catching up a few of those things in GitHub, like those resources you mentioned, Philip, and I plan to get in touch with you this week, just as our schedule allows, so we can go a little bit over how I would do the notes for one of the calls or something like that. And I think in going through it with you, it's going to help me look at the standard operating procedures that we have and make sure things are fully updated there. And also ties into our governance landing page. So we have a few kind of issues that are all intertwined. And I think that answering some of them will really give people an easier way to jump in and be involved as well. So that's basically what I'm going to work towards this week, and I don't have any blockers at this time on my side.
Thanks, Jason. Just to be clear, that's something that you and Philip are going to follow up on separately, or or is that something to talk about on the call today? I wasn't totally sure.
Sure. So last week, I was just giving an open call to everybody to say, hey, if you want to learn more about how to do the notes or how to do anything in GitHub, really, I'm very happy to help and teach. So just to echo that again, he was the one who replied to me directly and said, I'm on board, so I want to reach out to him and help, but that is open to anybody. So definitely anybody out there, feel free to reach out. I'm always happy to help.
And did you want to try to save time for that on the call today, or is that something that you guys are planning to follow separately?
We'll do that separately.
Cool. Thank you. All right. Anyone else want to do a stand-up update?
Sure, I can do a quick one. So I've mentioned this project a few times before. So one of our community managers, Russ, and I have been working on ways to, I guess, overhaul or revamp the way that our community takes on moderation. So I've talked a little bit about how we envision that looking on Discord, potentially the forum, and GitHub moving forward. And we feel pretty good about a plan for Discord. We were inspired by Stack Overflow's theory of moderation, and we should have a pretty good MVP by next week of, first of all, the different levels of privileges that we think community members can have, and obviously we would get feedback from community members. But Russ would also be building out a bot, and there would be a channel dedicated to like an audit log to show moderation. And we think this is pretty important to day-to-day governance and the way that community members make decisions themselves. And it's just like a really great step toward autonomy and decentralization. My instinct is that once we have a document outlined that we feel comfortable about and an MVP for next week, this is something that we'd love to experiment with like a core group of community members of 20 to 30 people to see if it works. So I will give you all an update on that. I actually have it in our schedule to come to the governance working group and show you all what we have outlined, just to get your thoughts and try to do like a 2-week experiment to see if it works for community members and get feedback on what we can change before actually implementing it. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Thanks, Jenny. Yeah, I'm excited too. I think that that's a really awesome, concrete thing that the governance working group can hopefully get involved with and help out with. And I think there's clear value in it for the community as well. It's also in line with the code of conduct, which Philip mentioned a moment ago and which we've talked about here. So it's great.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm curious to see what folks think about how the code of conduct can apply and how people can sort of cite bits from the code of conduct to justify their actions when they're actually moderating in Discord.
I haven't actually read the theory of moderation post that you mentioned, but I'm going to go ahead and drop the link for it here because this is, wow, that link looks a little funny. It looks like a really helpful resource, so thanks for sharing that as well. And there's an update also. Awesome. Any other stand-ups?
I'm happy to combine mine into the foundation update, but I'll wait and just to make sure that there's no one else who.
I'll just do mine super briefly then. Yeah, so I spent some time continuing to work on my own, I guess analysis is the right word, kind of like analysis report on the results of the survey. As far as I'm concerned, that's done. And so I posted the link for that on GitHub in the relevant issue. I'll drop that here in the chat in a second as well for anyone who may not have seen it yet. Again, I mean, please feel free to take a look, like jump in, contribute to it. It's a Google Doc that has commenting turned on, so you can share your comments there. Also, just closing off some other loose threads on the survey. So I posted as well a link in GitHub, which I'll also drop here, to the raw results, which I both anonymized and randomized as a Google Sheet. And I think that those should be archived somewhere into our knowledge base, somewhere on GitHub probably. So that's an issue I opened. And then, yeah, with Jason, just tying off some loose threads on GitHub. I closed the project board for phase 1 because I think phase 1 is behind us. And so I've been thinking a lot about things, longer term tasks that this working group can work on in the future. And so I made a list of those and opened an issue, and I think that's on the agenda separately. So I'll defer till we get to that bullet point. No specific blockers, and I guess just continuing to think about the role of this working group and how we can add value in the future. Thanks. I guess unless someone else wants to jump in with an update, Brittany, feel free to give yours.
Sure. So some of the things working on this week are just around the priorities for Q2 and Q3 from the foundation. So kind of putting together just what the organization as a whole will be kind of working towards. I'm going to put that as a forum post. So I already have that drafted. I just need to hit publish so that folks can, add feedback or ask questions of what that is. So that's something that will be going out. Within those deliverables, one of the things is this call for board nominations. So we continue to have nominations coming in. People are able to nominate more than one person. We fixed that in our block survey so that, if you ran into that issue before, it's now open and available. And the current information sort of plan on that is that the first board meeting will be in June, end of June, 2020. And at that board meeting, that's when we'll sort of fully make the foundation operational, including like accepting the bylaws, accepting the initial board members. And then after that point, we can determine, potentially having any new nominated board members be part of the following board meeting. So the first one is just like very much set up and making sure it's running, but anything to do with adding new board members or going through the process for vetting these nominations would happen after that point or in parallel to that point, but just nothing's going to happen that quickly, I guess, with adding new board members. So that's the update there. In terms of the next steps for what the board nomination is. So we have nominees. Now, what is the process for kind of making those public and known? I think that is a discussion maybe on the forum that I can take over there and we can kind of discuss in more detail. So I can message that in Discord and then bring that back to the forum. So that's my update. If there's any questions on that, happy to take those now, or we can move those to discussion.
I just had
Thanks,
one quick question. Yeah, thank you. I was curious, you shared with us a little ways back a draft of the bylaws, and we were talking a little bit about that. Are those going to go up to a place for community comment as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So with the bylaws, we have sort of the generic bylaws, which most nonprofits use. You can look publicly on Zcash. Those are the exact same as the ones that we were given by our legal counsel. So we can either make those amendments before we accept the bylaws or after the bylaws are put into place. So I can share that, I guess. I don't know if it'd be easier to put it in something like GitHub or the forum, but being able to share that and get comment on it so people can look through. So yes, so before the board meeting, which is in like 2 weeks, getting that done. Thanks, Jason.
Cool. Does anyone else have any other follow-up questions for Brittany? I have just a quick one, Brittany, and that is there anything that any of us or the working group in general can do to help out with all the work you have on your plate, and in particular with the board nomination process? Do you feel that you have enough nominations? Can we help spread the word, or is it really just kind of a wait and see, and things will pick up again after the next board meeting, which happens, I think you said at the end of this month, right?
yeah, like June 24th, I think is the tentative date. So yeah, I think the nomination process, like what that looks like, how we want to get public, I would love more thoughts on, just like how that could function and how that could work. I know some other organizations have done it. So if you've seen anything, being able to surface that, I think is really helpful. But yeah, I don't anticipate taking that on solely on my own, but I think it's like there are a few other things that need to get up and running, and then having more time to focus on that. So if anyone wants to kind of have a smaller conversation about that, we can do that too.
Awesome. Exciting. Thank you. I'm definitely excited to see the outcome of that process and see the board come together. Okay, I guess moving along, so we'll move into the action items section on the agenda. And the first is our meta action item, which is action items for action items. I know this was discussed last week. We had talked specifically about, well, so yeah, to provide a tiny bit of context here for folks who may not have been part of this conversation previously, something that we saw in the governance calls in Ethereum that worked really well was highlighting specific action items that come out of calls, recording them, making a note of them, and then we had also discussed here specifically kind of attaching an owner to each of them for accountability purposes. I actually don't remember where this conversation stood as of the last call. Jason, I feel like you may have thoughts on this. Do you have anything to add here?
Yeah, so I hesitated to take it off the list just because we sort of discussed that idea of putting names to actions, and I like it. I didn't see any pushback, at least on that call or from anybody else, and I think it'll help with accountability and everything like that. But we didn't really decide on a way to do that. And I know what I was trying to do last week was type up some basic notes as I was going along and post them as a comment, but I don't know if that would be as useful as doing something like, hey, that was an action item. You know, this is the person who said something about it, and maybe commenting in that sort of fashion. And I don't know if that would require like one role for one observer to say like, hey, I know I'm going to record the action items for the meeting, much like the moderator does the moderation, or if it's just something that we can kind of band together and do individually. But that's something I'm going to look for today is as we talk about action items, I'll try and put, if somebody puts their name out there, I'll try and put that name to it in a comment so we have a way to move forward. And from that, we can probably knock that one off the list and just keep moving with it.
Cool, I agree with that. I think we don't need to get too complicated here. I think we can do this in a relatively decentralized, consensus-driven fashion. Like as things that are clearly action items come up, we should just make a point of that here in this call. And then, yeah, maybe we want a role, you know, maybe we have a moderator role for each call. Maybe we have a note taker role. Maybe we have like an action items recorder role. Maybe it's the same or different than the note taker role, but someone who's accountable for recording them and sharing them after the call. Okay, so yeah, I see some thumbs up. Do you have anything else to add, Jason, or should we move on?
I was just going to say, you know, regarding that action items recorder role or additional roles on the call, I'm putting my name next to it. Did you want your name next to it? And is there anybody else?
For this call specifically, you mean? Or just in general?
Yeah,
I'm confused what you mean.
So for this call specifically, I'm perfectly happy to make note of that, and I'll be the action items recorder. But just looking at the additional roles, or you know, the idea of we'll probably end up creating an issue for that, so we'll put a name by it. So I'm going to put yours and my name by that one, and just so everybody knows, if there is an action item that you want to jump on, just voice it here, and I will add it to the comments on the agenda.
Perfect. All right, thanks for doing that. So next topic is catching the call references back up. I think we mean resources probably by this. So the notes and the recording information. If you have the agenda open as I do, you can see that some of these have been crossed off. So Jason just went in and I reviewed his PR and I merged it. So we're all caught up on recordings. We added notes for call 12. We still are about 3 calls behind, or 4 calls behind if you include this one on the notes. And I added a note here as well that they're kind of starting to pile up a little bit. I mean, being 3 calls behind is not the end of the world, but you know, we were doing a better job of this before. What do folks think? Do we like, so again, just sharing what worked and didn't work in past, you know, calls and groups I've been a part of. What worked really well was bounties. This was just like notes for a call was just a very small, very specific task that anybody in the ecosystem who is looking to get more involved in governance could happily, you know, take upon themselves. And we were able to pay out small bounties for folks for doing things like transcribing notes, editing notes, that kind of thing. So just throwing that out there, that's one thing that seems to work well. If people have other ideas about how we can keep the notes up to date, I'd love to hear them. I do want to reiterate that having written notes is really, really, really helpful for a lot of reasons, right? We have these videos, of course, and we're caught up on the videos, but you know, notes are searchable and archivable in a way that videos are not. They may be easier for some people to read. People, you know, also they're easier to skim quickly if you're trying to get caught up on something rather than watching an hour-long video. So personally, I think there's a lot of value in having notes as well.
Is there a way to like then loop the agenda of the meeting today with the notes updates? Because I know we have this really nice agenda, and so it's like maybe it's even just adding the notes into the thing instead of trying to maybe transcribe what's happening in the videos, because I know the transcription service works some of the way, but you know, I was going through one of them and it's like a lot of work to actually correct exactly what was said. So maybe just trying to lower the, you know, make it more real-time updates as we're on the call, making updates to the notes or the agenda items, like as a maybe a commentary, and then adding the video later. So yeah, I guess it's maybe just like what's the fidelity of those notes, and so that we can make it achievable.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of good ideas in there. I mean, I think one related idea may be to the extent that the Zoom transcription feature is working, and it has worked for all of our calls except one. It just failed for one of the calls. We could literally just throw up the raw transcript. It's better than nothing. Obviously, there will be a lot of typos and bloopers, as Jason and I have been calling them. So that's something we can consider doing. Another option, Brittany, as you're proposing, is sort of trying to record some notes live. Now, this is something that I did way back. It's something that Jason has done more recently. I think Jason actually did it for the call last week. I think it's a great idea. I think having a very, you know, brief set of maybe meeting minutes, we could call them, again, is a lot better than nothing. I guess we just would need someone or some group of people to step up and volunteer to do it.
I would like to jump in here. So for example, what works best for us in the evangelist community call, we have this ongoing paper doc that, for example, everybody tries to fill in, and I just give them probably a heads up before the day. Oh, here's the paper doc for tomorrow. Here's the agenda. If you have anything that you would actually like to add, please add it today or before the meeting. And afterwards, it's just, for me, easier to compile. So it's more like a high level, you know, you don't really need to go on the nitty-gritty details of the entire call. It's just, for example, we discussed this, what Brittany said, these kinds probably like we discussed these 5 bullet points, and these are like the set of action items. So it's, in that sense, it's more like easier to actually look at rather than looking at like really long notes in general. I mean, that's like my standard too. But for us, it usually works. People look at the notes and they browse the video if they want more detail to it.
Luis, that's really helpful. Do people update those notes in real time during the call? Does someone go in and update them after the call, or really like it's just everything you need is there from before the call? I'm just curious the logistics there.
I mean, Jason knows how it works, because sometimes I ask him, oh, can you actually put your updates in that call? So it's like, for example, in our evangelist meeting, it's probably 6 people that's trying to put in their notes on the same paper doc. And for me, I just try to compile it afterwards so people can actually consume it better. And then I try to add, for example, Jason said something really nice, and then I put it also in the paper doc. That's how we do it in the community, maybe just like a suggestion. I can send you like the sample forum post that we actually do.
So maybe not having a specific note taker role like we're discussing here, but instead crowdsourcing and saying it's everyone's responsibility. That's
yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. You know, it's just like, you know, if everybody puts their own little agenda, then, you know, it actually makes an entire really good note for the meeting.
But it's always good to have an owner of the process, so, because then to make sure
It's
that
it's
will
true.
happen. Yeah.
I'm the
So
owner
then,
actually, so it's so true.
because this is not it's not a legal terms in terms of the board meeting. That's you have to have official taking of notes and minutes, and it has to be approved and all that. But here we at least it was a working group, so then that's something that could be something in the middle. It could be a practical way, because actually we are not we are far away, and so we have to work all together. But it could be a mix of what we have today. But it's been a good job. But it's not so terrible. 3 is it's not so bad. Of course, it's the exponential is the same as the virus. Is exponential needs of effort to put up the test net, and also the mining, plus the understanding what is clarity, and plus understanding governance, plus understanding how you're going to make it happen, and all that. And that is a lot of work, and I never thought it was going to be like that. But obviously, you must be feeling the same way. I mean, I can guess that everybody's a bit it's a lot of work. But it's been a good job. I mean, it's something in the middle, if we can participate in a way. But good.
So, sorry, Jason, go ahead.
Oh, that's fine. I was gonna say I definitely have some input here, because I've done a good chunk of the notes and tried a few different methods, right? Like I've tried taking live notes on the call and publishing them that way. I've tried looking back at the transcriptions and updating them as Brittany described, and all of it's interesting because it's different levels of capturing information. Like my concern with doing live notes is like, am I actually capturing everyone's points? Did I miss something? If somebody were to go back and watch the video, would they go, hey, why didn't you mention this? So what I see here, and actually what I like about that, and thinking about the community process with Luis there, we have this agenda. The agenda is definitely open for anybody to comment on, and the agenda really needs to go out after the call ends. So I think that's something we can challenge ourselves to do. That way the agenda lives for a week where people can comment, review it, and kind of look at it. From there, I love the idea of using the agenda to generate some high level or live notes, so that we could say, hey, these were the agenda items. As we hit each item, a quick summary, much like what we've done with the community working group and the stuff with Luis. That way there's something there to say, we hit it, we talked about it, this was the summary, maybe this is the action and the assignment, it all kind of fits together. I do like the idea of uploading the transcription as well to the canonical notes reference. And I think that is a good first step that could be followed up by somebody cleaning it up later, which could also be a bounty type item. And one of the things that we used to do that we're not really doing anymore were the regular updates as well. So the idea there was we would have the meeting, we would have our super long form notes, and then there would be a public update that was much like the forum post Luis does or anything else, to say, hey, this is some of what we covered and some of what we're doing. But it sort of fell off, especially now that the notes are falling behind. The update would follow that, and it's falling behind as well. So I like that idea of, if we did the high level kind of meeting minutes notes style, where it's just somebody recording that information and maybe recording the action items, it would give us an easy way to get that update out faster, create the agenda for the next meeting right away, and then as time goes on, updating the transcription, or even just having the transcription as a main reference. I think that flow might help a lot, and I'm curious if anybody else has any thoughts on that.
I see a thumbs up from Harold. Thanks, Harold. Another thumbs up from Philip. So a lot of good ideas here. Do we have any, I mean, in the interest of time, I definitely want to keep moving through the agenda. We have a bunch still to get to, but do we have any specific action items here? Like, I guess, what's the next step? Do we want to, like, one thing we can do is we can try doing different things on different calls in the future and seeing what works. Like, it's easy to say it would be nice if someone did X, but I personally don't want to, I don't think anyone here should be telling anyone else what to do. And so kind of if someone wants to volunteer to do one of these things, then that's wonderful. And if not, then I think maybe we need a fallback plan. I mean, Jason, you do a lot already. I don't want to suggest that you take on more work.
Well, in this case, I don't know if it's necessarily more work or just a better structure for the work, for that same reason, to have fallbacks and everything else. So, I don't have a running note today against our agenda. I could kind of capture half of that, but I think that's more of an idea for the next meeting and for this idea of possibly a note taker or action taker type role. But I do like the idea. We can get the transcription up right after the meeting, same time the video recording goes up. We can definitely get the, what was the other piece that I wanted here? Oh, and get the next meeting's agenda up right away as well. So I think the two immediate actions to me would be, let's make sure we get our agenda up right after the meeting, whether that's me, you, or somebody else. And just building that as part of our standards and standard operating procedures. So that's something that I'm happy to help with to make it easier for everyone else. If I can do that, then that's something I'm willing to contribute to.
Thank you. That's really helpful. Yeah, I think those are both easy wins. And those, like you said, those don't really require any additional effort. They're just more efficient use of existing effort, maybe. And yeah, we'll keep this on the agenda. We can keep talking about it next week. And if we want to try something different for next week's call, then I think that's a great idea. Any final thoughts on this topic? Okay, so the next topic on the agenda is this brainstorming that I've been doing around long-term projects for the working group, for the governance working group. So I just dropped a link in the chat here to an issue that I opened. I don't think there's a specific action item here. I kind of just wanted this to be on everyone's radar. Brittany and Jenny and I had kind of discussed this a little bit, just looking forward, now that the foundation does exist, trying to kind of, I think it would be helpful to delineate a little bit the respective roles of PBC, of the foundation, maybe of the working group as well. I think a lot of the things on this list, some of them are probably terrible ideas, maybe some of them are good ideas, some of them can become independent projects, some of them could become tasks with kind of help wanted tags on them in our PM repository. Before doing any of that, I wanted to throw this out there and just see what other folks think about this list. So anyone who feels like it, if you take a look at this list and if you have any thoughts about things on this list, are they good ideas? Are they terrible ideas? Is anything missing? Anything you want to share right now, go for it.
Yeah, I think this is a good list, Lane. Thank you for sharing. So I've been doing a lot of thinking around this too. And I know on the call we discussed the SIPS process and grants because they are priorities for the foundation. So they make sense as priorities for the governance working group as well. The other angle that I was coming at it from was just thinking about the problems that we as an ecosystem want to share. So this is probably something that the team needs to do a little better of sharing problems with community and identifying priorities from there. So for example, I would count like minor identification and onboarding as a shared problem between everyone in the ecosystem, since that is pretty critical to the launch of Stack2 and PUX working the way that we want it to. So because that would be an ecosystem-wide priority, making that also a priority to at least discuss and address with the governance working group seems to make sense to me. So I've been wondering whether that's worth having like maybe not even a town hall, but even a smaller scale public call where we all sort of discuss the different work streams that folks are involved in the ecosystem and try to prioritize from there. So I would add things like that to the list as well.
Thanks, Jenny. That's
Oh,
super
another
helpful.
example of stacking. Sorry, I talked about mining, but I should also mention, like we talk about this in the business models working group, but that is a shared problem as well. I think there are a lot of folks who are interested in stacking, and there are products and just things that we need to flesh out before that works the way that we want it for community members to work. So that would also be a shared priority, I think.
Thanks, Jenny. Yeah, I'm actually making a quick note in this GitHub issue about a couple of the things you just shared. But if we can, yeah, if you have more that you want to throw into the GitHub issue, it's a great place for those things. Thanks.
Probably I see this list is quite good and extensive, but probably one of the actions that will grow, and additionally to the C process grants and mining, is the education. Education will be probably one of the events, and education. Those are probably going to be the very important areas of growth. It could be the Blockstack University or something like that, or it could be something that will grow because of the as the experience that we had in business models, that we went to basic, and that's, I think, is very valuable. And so then that's because we can take it from the ground up and leverage the whole community, and that could be a huge process, a world process, in different languages and different areas. It could be a big thing, not just for the elite. Yeah.
Thank you, Philip. I definitely agree. Yeah, so again, in the interest of time, I think we'll probably keep moving. I'm happy we touched upon this. If you look at this list, a couple of these have issues attached to them, number 32, number 38, like translation, for example. We have an issue for that, but we probably could have an issue open for most of these, and it would just be, they have the potential to become large projects, and far more than we could cover in this or any single call. Yeah, let's keep sharing ideas, and I think that we have a lot that we could work on.
One final thought on this is, I wonder if it's worth us as a working group discussing what our priorities are for the next 2 or 3 months or so, and like coming to a consensus and saying, okay, these are the 2 or 3 things we want to make sure we deliver in the next couple of months. Who wants to be in charge of or take part in these work streams? I think it was Jason who had shared the group that does all of their working group work entirely asynchronously and over email. And that was a great way to report on the work that you're doing for different work streams, so that, if it takes too much time to discuss all of them on a working group call, you could get a really good update just from the email thread. And maybe that's a direction that we want to move in as a working group as well.
I think that's a great idea. Really, really great idea. Let's add that as an action item. And that could be communicated as a blog post also. Jenny, I know something that we had spoken about before is accountability. And I think that nothing is as good for accountability as putting down and writing the things you plan to do and asking the community to hold you accountable to actually delivering on them.
Yes, it's both scary and very good, very effective.
Exactly. Okay, cool. Thank you for everyone's feedback on that. The next topic on the agenda is the survey. I briefly touched upon this in my own stand-up. So just as a reminder, the survey was closed to new results a couple of weeks ago. It has, there's 2 issues that I linked here in the chat a few minutes ago that include my own analysis as well as the raw results. I think the only task to discuss maybe right now is this reaching out to the respondents. And we've talked about this a couple of times. We have email addresses from many of the people. I think most of the people who responded. We probably want to follow up with them sooner rather than later, and it's already getting to be a little bit later, to do certain things, like maybe invite them to join a call or share more about governance working group, or maybe share a blog post when we have one, maybe sharing more resources. You know, a lot of folks indicated that they felt they didn't really understand governance. Does anyone have any thoughts on how or when we want to do that?
I'll jump in real quick and say definitely sooner than later for that one, because I feel like we've passed that point. You know, we've got it closed off now, and it's time to get back to these people. Kind of gives them a little bit of validation for everything they've done, especially with the long completion times on the survey. So what would it take? I would assume that we'd want this email to come from the stacks.org email address, just because we have that availability now, and that's probably going to be the official communications channel moving forward. So with that in mind, what would it take, or what can we do to help draft this? Do we want that to be a community thing? Is somebody going to take lead on that and then share it and then we send it, or just the structure of that? And I'll note it in my notes in the comment here.
I agree on sooner than later, especially because, you know, as the previous topic that you mentioned, that we had to put it on an action list, that also could be influenced by what we can see from the survey. For example, just looking at the raw data and looking at the Chilean respondents, and I realized that there's a potential there, because there are people that actually are leading or are working on the local communities, blockchain community. So then you know, there's things that we can do in towards, you know, increasing or strengthening the community and doing some action. So probably we don't have to be so perfect on the first analysis, and we have to, and then it will give us some hints on which actions should be enforced and or strengthened and be more successful. But now, because, you know, before the mainnet comes up, you know, because that will help the whole ecosystem.
Yeah, well, I think, you know, I'm happy to help coordinate sending from Stacks.org. So I think that's easier to do now, so we can have that set up.
I'm kind of, Jason, for purposes of accountability, I'm happy to have my name on this action item. I'm just hesitating because I just don't know what we want to say. And I think that's something that everyone needs to give some thought to and maybe contribute to. You know, it's a no-brainer to say the things that we've been saying, right? Which is join the working group, and here's the resources. And I just don't know that we have anything new to say. And that's why I'm feeling like maybe the right thing to do is to get out at least one blog post, maybe finish the one that Jenny's been working on. And maybe that gives us a slightly new message, something to communicate that wasn't already communicated in the survey.
I like that idea, just depending on the status of the blog post and where we're at with that being the main blocker to doing so. And the other things that I thought of too is just trying to do the clear linking to resources, you know, like instead of saying, hey, here's the resources repository, it's like this README has this information and this calls README has this information. Because I know at one point it was expressed to me that somebody didn't realize we had a table of all the calls that related to all the notes. And after showing them, they were like, wow, this is amazing. It's exactly what I would have wanted. I just didn't know to ask or to look for it. So I do see, and actually too, in doing this, I think that's going to help us with the some of the other items we have around the shared landing page, or might be another one that we could try to include with that idea, but definitely want to figure out the best way to move with time. So that's interesting. And I think a lot of this, just for those watching the call or anything else, so in the project management repository, the PM repository, issue number 60 is what covers the survey follow-up, and I'll have that in my comment as well. And that would probably be the best place. If there's something that you think we should share or something to add, just to throw that as a comment into that issue. And thank you, Lane, for throwing that link in there. But that's my thought on it.
Okay. Something else we had talked about maybe doing before was like, I can't remember exactly how we phrased this, but like writing short analyses or discussions or descriptions of aspects of governance. So rather than just linking to things, right? We have this resources repository with a lot of links on it. It's a little overwhelming for someone landing on that page and just seeing 100 links. Can we, I feel like Harold, maybe you were the one who proposed this. I don't remember exactly, but could we go in and kind of like actually post some descriptions or short summaries of some of these resources? So maybe that's something that we could share. Jason, you raised your hand. Was it you who had proposed that? Sorry if I got that wrong.
No, not at all. And it's been some great efforts by everybody. So it's not just that, but definitely project management repository issue number 33, or no, not 33 with the shared resources. Darn, I'd have to look it up again. But I had one where I think it was actually in the resources repository. See, this is where things get a little confusing, where I was starting to track additional resources that I wanted to add to the list. And I recognized that it's a long list of links, and these links go to multi-page articles and really deep concepts and things that are excellent to read, have some sort of high-level summary or a way to say like, hey, this link is about this, and here's a paragraph of what it's about, because gives you an easier way to jump into it and know what you're consuming versus like, okay, I've got 10 links and 8 hours and a whole pot of coffee and I'm gonna rock it out. So with that in mind, yeah, that one was in the resources repository. I don't remember the issue number offhand, but it was definitely something that I think we would all need to work together on too, because with all the reading content that's there, not one of us is going to be, nor should be, the main voice for what's in those articles, but it might give a little more insight as to why we have those on the list.
I guess it's this number 33. There aren't many open issues in the resources repository. There's a bunch of stuff in here. Okay. Cool. I think the next steps are pretty clear here. I'm in the process of adding some notes to the issue on the survey follow-up on GitHub. We're coming up to the top of the hour. We still have a few things, so let's keep moving. That's it for the survey. Governance landing page. This was on the agenda for last week. I personally, I don't think there's a whole lot more to discuss here. I think we can kind of just leave this to come back to. Does anyone have any additional thoughts on this topic?
I think that we have a lot of contents for that landing page in terms of at least as a presentation. We have the resources, and that's already, I think, done, but it has to be obviously beautifully done in a design. But that's what is just the presentation of the resources is a lot of is a base, a good base for that. I think so.
I know one main thing that came up about that landing page was possibly using GitHub Pages as a quick way to help organize all the different repositories, the resources in there, plus give people a real easy way to contribute and keep track of the changes. I know I'm for this idea. I haven't had a chance to play around with it or see the best way we would set it up in relation to the repositories, and definitely would love some feedback of anybody who's more of an expert in it than I am. And aside from that, if there was anybody who thinks there would be a better way to do it or something aside from GitHub Pages that we should use, open to hearing that as well. But I think in the short term, especially given that we're doing so much on GitHub, that it makes sense. So that's my side of it.
Thanks, guys.
You can use Git stack.
I like GitHub Pages. I'm personally less worried about the presentation framework than I am about the content. I think that we'll figure out how to present it, but like the challenge is putting together the content. Okay, so we'll leave this as an action item. Thanks for sharing those thoughts. Blog posts. This is an important one. Jenny, do you have anything you want to share on where that stands?
Nothing in particular. I would say please go and like rip it apart if it's not good. It's the first draft. So I went with like a more introductory route because I found myself getting caught in the weeds about what I could talk about there. But if anyone feels strongly about other things that I should add, please feel free to add, and you know, I'd be happy to revise. I think one section that I felt particularly attached to and had a hard time writing was the section on you know, what we as a working group believe in, or our shared values. I thought it was important to talk about how we have had a lot of discussions about, you know, the social layer of governance. And I think that that's something that I'd love to emphasize because it does differentiate the way that this governance group works compared to other projects. So if there is anything there that I could capture with more nuance or, you know, with richer detail, please feel free to, you know, note that in the issue. But I mean, I would be prepared to get that set up to be published next week if we felt good about it.
Thanks, Jenny. I just dropped the link here for folks who haven't had a chance to review it yet. Yeah, I guess that's our call to action. Please take a look, and it sounds like we can probably get this published pretty soon. That's very exciting, and hopefully it's the first of multiple such posts from and about the governance working group.
Yeah, I'm happy to be the owner on that, and I'm happy to be held accountable for at least I mean, I can chase people down for edits or suggestions on revisions, and have something like a final draft by our next meeting next Wednesday.
Speaking personally, I find deadlines to be really helpful. I know that you had assigned a deadline to, you know, your previous issues, saying, you know, tell me what should be included in this post, and so I'm all for that. If you want to assign a deadline of the next call, if you want to just kind of remind people in Discord, you know, 2-3 days from now, like, hey, this is your last chance to get input in, I think that would be great.
Sounds good.
Thank you. Exciting. Okay, we're down to the last two topics. We have 1 minute to get through them. Let's see if we can do this. SIP's process proposal. I think actually that could probably be moved down to the open discussion section. It's a living document. I think, you know, I probably asked Brittany on the last call, where does this stand from the perspective of the foundation? And the answer was like, well, what, that it's something that the foundation will be taking more upon itself, I think, in the next quarter, right? And that need to figure out exactly some of the core developers, folks like Jude, have been kind of weighing in on it, and we need to figure out exactly who is responsible for which pieces of the SIP process. I don't know if there's a specific action item here right now, but if
I don't think there's an action item right now. It is
good.
A little bit in the transition, but yeah, I think Jude weighed in and some things. So it's open if people still haven't had a chance to take a look and add some comments, but the resolution of it will probably happen later this month into July.
Perfect. Okay, that's actually quite soon, so it's exciting to hear. And Brittany, do you foresee a role in the governance working group in SIP's process going forward, vis-a-vis the role of the foundation?
Yeah, I think the SIP process will have like these open times for like comments and feedback. They will likely be more technical in nature. So I think if folks gravitate towards that side, that's a great place to weigh in. You know, everyone will have access to weigh in on the different proposals. So I think it's not necessarily a huge action item under the governance group, but if folks in this group want to weigh in and help establish that or give comments on different proposals, then that's where I see it playing a role.
Awesome, thank you. I'm just updating the next item here, engineering calls added to governance resources. That's been done. So Jason, thank you for that. I think that's it for the main agenda. We can briefly move through the list of open discussion items. And just as a reminder, these are things that live on the agenda that we don't necessarily have time to discuss in depth, but we want to kind of make a note that they're here. And if people do have thoughts on them, they should feel free to share them, but not feel obliged to comment if they don't have anything to add. So Harold, your one pager for the Fab Academy meeting, am I correct in remembering that yes, you added 2 more links to resources here. Did you want to speak to this stuff briefly?
Yes, thank you kindly. Yeah, I added the Tura Wampum Development Council one pager as well, along with the SIP for both the original ideas for the issue of both proposals, and they really do complement each other in terms of if you read one, you won't have to do as much reading for the second, and so I put them there together. To spare anybody that gets eyes on it. And yeah, I'd like to, I guess, add an action item there for any refinement of these ideas. They're far from refined and can only get better with contributions from folks like yourselves. And so I'm excited to get these ideas refined in the GitHub issue there, and hopefully other folks can see what I've tried to describe there in those one pagers, and why it's exciting. So yeah, I'll stop it there.
Thank you, Harold. Thank you for sharing them. Thanks for the update. These are really fantastic resources, so definitely take a look at them if you haven't already. And as Harold said, they'll only get better with people's feedback. Okay, Community Research Observer. I don't think we have anything to add on this. I don't think there's been an update here over the past week, but just noting this is still something we care about doing, and it's something that I think Brittany suggested should be possible from the perspective of the foundation. Brittany had to drop the call already, so maybe we can, we'll check with her next time and see if there's anything to add on that one. Code of conduct. This is something that comes up again and again and again. I'm just opening this myself to see if there was anything else added here. It's funny, it's been mentioned in every working group call recently, but no additional updates. Again, it's a living document. If you have thoughts, please throw them in GitHub or mention them on Discord. Yeah, it's an important document. Sorry, Philip, did you unmute there for a second?
No, just an idea that then you can retrieve all this code of conduct ideas, from all the documents that we already have. That could be an action that could be done. I mean, it's the thing is that we have so much to do, but I can see what we can do. But just thinking of that, that there's one concept, another. So then those are the things, and then from that you can make an abstraction. So that's something that we can maybe do. I don't know who can do it. I'm a bit. My plate is quite full, and I would like to do it, but I'm not sure that the time will. I have too many hats.
Philip, of course, we all identify with that. I just want to ask, the first thing you said was that we could put this together from documents we already have. Can you explain what you meant by that a little bit?
I've seen in the interviews, I've seen in many areas that there's some mention of the added. In the Discord also, they have, as Jason was mentioning, there's some mention of the certain attitudes, and also this conference that we are attending in London, supposedly, this Cox and I don't remember the name, but that's leadership, I don't know, on artificial intelligence and blockchain, or distributed, decentralized. They mentioned that the most important aspect of work, the future work, will be the attitude. attitude work instead of the technical capabilities. Because if you have the attitude, you can learn the technical capabilities. And so that's something recurrent. So then the attitudes that we see here is we can stress that. And I've seen that mentioned in different places. And it's interesting because, you know, there's something that is not specifically done. Of course, Munib would try to say that in this letter in a way. But then it could be, I think that we can at least, you know, have like a kind of a retrieval of all the attitudes we've seen, you know, all the qualities or spiritual qualities or human values and or all those things that are already written in the document. So
I think that's a very valid point.
Yeah.
But yeah, to your point as well, Philip, it will be a task to go in and kind of extract those thoughts and turn them into a code of conduct. Yeah. Okay, I agree. Cool. All right. Languages and translation. We mention this every meeting as well. We care a lot about this. It's definitely, I think it is on the, I'm certain it's on the list of longer term projects that the working group can work on. Jump in if you have anything to add. Shared resources. I actually don't remember what this is. Shared StackScov and BlockStack resources. Yeah,
yeah. So that was the idea of just sharing resources across the
Right.
board, like having the Foundation Zoom account or the shared YouTube account, and it kind of links into the standard operating procedures as well. So we just keep this one as a rolling item. My main ask to everyone is, you know, how could we use BlockStack applications in a shared fashion, since we don't really have a way to do that yet. But outside of that, we will likely see an update on this one. I don't have any promises because I know we don't have Brittany on the call anymore, but I have fingers crossed that we're going to see some of those initial accounts like Zoom and stewardship of some of the other things like YouTube move over to the Foundation in the next few weeks here. So some of that will be updated, but we just have it as a rolling topic for now.
Lovely. Thank you for that. And finally, founding document review. I think the code of conduct falls under founding documents, along with other things like statements of shared principles and mission and vision and values and these sorts of things. Yeah, again, it's always a good time to take a look at what we have and to share your thoughts on those if you haven't already. They're also living documents, but I expect as we move forward with the establishment of the Foundation, then at some point we may want to kind of, you know, release a version 1 of these documents, and then we can continue to iterate on them. Thank you so much for your time today, everybody. Does anybody have any last minute thoughts that they want to share with the group?
One thing that came to mind is we had mentioned bounties for notes, and it brought up in mind bounties for the language translation for the long term. I don't know if we've discussed this in the past. It slips my mind, but this is something that just came into my head as well. With the nonprofit that I work with, Great Peace, and in the Indigenous Council, there's a lot of folks that do language translation pretty much every day. And so it just came to my mind in terms of it might be something that they're interested in this lockdown time when some of their actual language translation jobs have kind of dried up. So the bounties might make sense for them as well. So just something that came to my mind.
Yes, and to comment on that real quick, I know Jenny had mentioned that's a little bit of what we're doing in the proof of transfer group. So I know we've been trying to do some translations there, and there's been some bounties offered up, and I think the same kind of thing makes sense. I mean, anything that's a small concrete task that we can easily define, we can respect that it does take people's time and offer them some basic form of compensation for that time in order to help the group move forward. So I'm all for it.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you kindly, guys. A beautiful meeting.
Likewise. Thank you, everybody. Agree on the bounties topic. I'll make a note of that here in GitHub. We can discuss that further. Thanks for a wonderful meeting. Have an amazing week, everybody. Stay safe, and see you back here, same bat time, same bat channel next week. Ciao.
Sounds good. Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Oh.